Hey everyone, welcome back to this explainer for the For the Wise podcast. So glad you're here. Go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and just settle in with us for a late night deep dive. Looking over at our resident clay owl, Hakeem, I can tell he's already looking a bit skeptical about tonight's topic. And honestly, he absolutely should be, because tonight we are unpacking a really messy truth: the friction of misaligned minds.
We've all heard this one, right? Two heads are better than one. It's plastered on motivational posters, it's preached at literally every corporate team-building retreat, and it's basically treated as an absolute law of the universe. But let's just call it what it really is. This is a classic piece of folk wisdom that happens to have a very, very optimistic marketing department behind it. In reality, out there in the messy, day-to-day world, adding another head doesn't just neatly double your brain power. A lot of times, another head can infinitely complicate your life.
Section 1. The Two Heads Myth. Section 2. Clashing Operating Systems.
The absolutely crucial point here is that cognition, the actual act of thinking, it isn't just an additive process. You don't just stack one brain on top of another. It's highly interactive. When you add a second person to a problem, you aren't just plugging in a flash drive with extra intelligence. You are installing a whole second operating system onto the network. And that new system comes fully loaded with its own complex priorities, incentives, and deep-seated fears. When you have two highly compatible minds running in perfect sync, man, it is magic. It's effortless parallel processing. But incompatible systems, you just get lag and constant system crashes. You get this endless, exhausting background noise. I mean, look at Hakeem over there. His little play scarf looks wrapped extra tight tonight just thinking about that mental friction.
Let's ground this with an everyday metaphor. Imagine you're driving a car down a really tricky, winding mountain road in the dead of night. Having a second head in the passenger seat isn't always like having a helpful GPS. When your minds are misaligned, it's literally like that passenger is constantly reaching over and gently, or maybe not so gently, tugging on the steering wheel. They're totally altering your trajectory. And here is the really wild part. Even their silence becomes a heavy form of influence. You start second-guessing your turns just based on their vibe, a sigh, or their hesitations.
Section 3. The Delusion Loop. We really have to talk about the asymmetry here. See, one confused mind working alone is just a localized problem, but two confused minds become something so much worse. Let's walk through how this actually escalates. Step 1, they validate each other's errors. One person has a terrible idea, the other person nods and agrees just because it feels comfortable. Step 2, they accelerate bad decisions. Because they feel validated, they just hit the gas pedal. And then step 3, they high-five and proudly call it teamwork. This is a self-reinforcing delusion loop. I'm noticing Hakeem's wide-eyed exhaustion right now, and honestly, I feel it too. It's like watching a bad partnership enthusiastically drive right off a cliff together, totally convinced they're taking a shortcut.
Section 4. Finding epistemic alignment. So how exactly do we avoid driving off that cliff? Well, it all comes down to epistemic alignment. Now, don't let the fancy academic word throw you off here. Let's break this down casually. Epistemic alignment is simply the degree of compatibility in how individuals process information, how they update their beliefs when presented with new facts, and most importantly, whether they prioritize objective truth over their own personal ego. Guys, this isn't some nice-to-have bonus feature for a team. This is the absolute foundational requirement before any real, actual teamwork can even begin to happen.
Imagine we're just sitting at a coffee shop right now, vetting a potential collaborator. These are the vital checks you absolutely need to run. First, how do they update their beliefs? When the data changes, do they change their mind, or do they just dig their heels in? Second, can they look you in the eye and say, "I was wrong," without suffering a massive ego injury? And third, what are they actually optimizing for? Are they optimizing for the truth of the project, or are they just optimizing for their own status, their comfort, or that petty thrill of winning an argument? Without alignment on these three questions, collaboration isn't progress. It is just friction masquerading as progress.
Section 5. The cost of friction.
This friction takes a totally devastating toll. When we look at where our mental energy goes, a solitary thinker puts 100% of their focus into solving the problem and doing the actual thinking. But in a bad partnership, that energy gets completely hijacked into managing the relationship. You're sitting in pointless meetings, trying to figure out weak, watered-down compromises that honestly please nobody. You are pouring all your mental bandwidth into the interpersonal dynamic rather than the actual problem on the table. The ultimate cost here isn't just inefficiency, it's cognitive erosion. It slowly wears down your ability to think sharply at all.
Have you ever noticed how a bad partnership can make a highly capable, really intelligent person feel strangely stupid? Well, this is exactly why. Your raw intelligence is being heavily diluted because your brain's CPU is maxed out doing other tasks.
You have to constantly translate your thoughts so the other person doesn't take offense. You have to constantly defend your basic premises. You have to negotiate every tiny step forward. And above all, you have to emotionally regulate both yourself and your partner. You are quite literally too busy managing emotions to actually think.
Section 6. A better collaboration rule.
Knowing all this, we really need a more realistic framework to live by. And here is the uncomfortable, unvarnished truth. 2 misaligned heads are worse than none. Just let that sink in for a second. With a bad partner, you aren't solving a problem. You are just fighting entropy with company. It's honestly better to face the blank page entirely alone than to face it with someone who is constantly pulling the steering wheel in the totally wrong direction.
To wrap our heads around this, we need a massive perspective shift. See, we've all been raised to view collaboration as a moral good. Like sharing your toys in kindergarten, we're taught it's just inherently virtuous to work in a group. But it's not. Collaboration is simply a technical tool. That's it. It's like a hammer or a piece of software. When you use that tool well, with the right alignment, it absolutely amplifies your signal. But when you use it poorly with the wrong people, it just multiplies the noise and falsely calls it wisdom.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought tonight as we look out over this beautiful star-filled mountain scene. And yeah, I see Hakeem has finally relaxed his scarf a bit. Ask yourself this. Look at the people you work with, create with, or build with. Are your collaborations amplifying your signal, or are they just multiplying your noise? Take some real time to think about that tonight. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer on the For the Wise podcast. If this resonated with you at all, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more late-night deep dives. Have a great night and keep your signals strong.